3 out to Lowell Point to the sewage lagoon there. The sewage lagoon is 30 million gallons, goes through about 1 million gallons a day at peak. That goes through the system, so it's basically a 30-day retention on it. Right now we're running less than half of that right now. But peak, that's what it's able to do pretty easily to go through that. You talk about the sludge removal we have. Last we've done, it's been 10 years ago, but we do sludge testing that we go out every year, twice a year. We do what's a sludge judge, and basically it's a test. You go around through the lagoon to test the depth of the sludge to see where it's at. It's only been 2-3 inches. It's been really, really good. The bacteria we have going in there, the sludge-eating bacteria, has been working very well, and it needs the air systems to do it. It's an aerated lagoon. So when R&M came and did their study, they went through most everything they could, and as they went through, they gave some suggestions of things that they thought would be helpful to do. There wasn't anything mandated to do, but there's some of these that would be nice to do, to have better aeration. I'd love to have new blowers out there. The blowers are 20-some years old. They're very, very loud and starting to have some issues with maintenance. We put things out there. The blowers is something, if we can get funding to do them, it'd be nice to do those. The only funding we did have, and it's still, it was $2 million to do sludge removal from that Murkowski was able to get through the community C10 community grant system, I think it is. Well, then we finally heard back from them, and I mean, it's a stack of application stuff you have to go through to fill out to get there. That's something that's been being waded through both administration and finance, and everybody looking at it going, oh my God, can we even get this? So far so good. We've been okay out there, but the whole idea is when you do sludge removal, you drain. There's 2 sections to that big lagoon out there. You drain one section, get it cleaned out with the sludge removal, and there's a lot of process to it. It's probably about a $3 million job to do it, but then you clean one side, let it fill back, empty the other side, clean it. The catch is on this one, we're ready to do a new liner. When we go do sludge removal, our liner is 30 years old. We want to get it in before we have any issues, and just so everybody knows, there's 3 monitor wells on the back side of that lagoon that we check to see. We're always checking for any leaks to see if there's anything getting in groundwater. But we haven't got there. Years past, we did have some, and they put this new liner, which has been very, very good in there. But when you do that, that's the time to do a new liner, which they put right over the top of the other liner. But you have to clean it out completely. So to do a new liner, you not only have to remove all your aeration equipment, but we have the biodomes that are in there, and there's 45 of them. It's all helicopter. Lifting 45 of them things out, putting them to the side so you can get clear on that liner, reline it, helicopter all those back in. That's the time when we would be then going the new air system upgrade to have better fine bubble aeration. So all those things are tied together. It makes the project even bigger, but that's the time to do it. I mean, when you drain that and squeegee that thing out, get a new liner in it, that's when you want to get your new stuff in there and get it done. So, I mean, it's something we're certainly working on and looking to do. But, it's a money thing. I can't, we want to get it done. We have some monies. We have plans to do it. We keep doing our testing out there. And we're required by DEC and the EPA to have all kinds of testing. Sometimes there's a small glitch. We have to find out why, what it is, but most of the time the lagoon's been running very well. 2 years ago we had an airline break that went into cell 1, which is the main cell. That airline, when it broke, it was in September, late September. We were able to drain that side of the lagoon most of the way down in order to do repairs. We got the contractor down here. He gave us the estimate, said he could have a crew down that following week. That weekend it snowed a foot, it froze, and never looked back that winter. It just made it impossible. We couldn't do the repairs. And now we have a drained lagoon with sludge on the bottom of ice sitting there, the ice trying to lift all our equipment off the ground as water, just rainwater gets in. It was kind of that perfect storm. It was terrible. There was a lot of smells out there. And the other side wasn't able by spring, as things thawed out. It took till May for all the ice to go out that year. And when it finally did, I mean, we were on it within a week and had the repairs done, but by then, it wasn't a good reputation out there, and folks, nobody enjoyed it, and we didn't either. I mean, we had our crew out there in waders in the sludge, having to replace and fix things out there while the contractor did the airline repair. So there is some things that could happen, and now and then they do, but since then, it's come back, it's running really well. All of our DO is good, and there's acronyms: DO, dissolved oxygen, and we have several tests we have to do out there. And as we do those tests monthly, we report to DEC on every one of them and have to keep that going. So the lagoon itself, it's working pretty efficiently. It was designed for 5,000. We typically have your population you're asking about has been roughly 2,000, give or take a little bit. You know, the last 3 censuses, it's actually gone down each census. But that, you know, when we all look at it, we all go, seems like we're growing a lot. You know, where's this? Why is the census not capturing that, or where it's at? But it's gone down, you know, from 2000 to 2010, from 2010 to 2020. Each one's dropped slightly. Now the next one, maybe it'll go back up some, but we're sitting at a town population of 2,000. Now that means, you know, in the summer we have more. We get to that peak in the summer for mainly July, and you know, that's our, you know, for that 1 month we pretty much are right toward our peak at keeping things going. But other than that, the rest of the year it's running. Good.
You know, so I guess just to back up and follow up on Bruce's question, you know, he's asking about, you know, population growth. You're talking about, you know, peak capacity of this piece of infrastructure. Help me understand. So we have a small pond across the bay, and we have this pond operating here for the larger population. It sounds like it's adequate. We don't need a third facility.
At this point, we don't.
The redundancy, or you don't really need it?
Well, cost-wise, can you afford it to have 3 going? I mean, I think there's ways to look at how to do it, and part of where this all came up, I think the conversation for PACAB to even be, other than just being interested in what's going on, what would be PACAB's take on it? I mean, where do you want to do? And I believe that, remember, Paquette was really looking at how can we get rid of the lagoon from Lowell Point? How can we either move the lagoon into town or set up a treatment plant in town? And that's where the way I understand it anyway, is where PACAB even addressed it. That was something that was, how do we, that place has grown up substantially. Every one of them, other than just a couple dry cabins when that went in 1980, none of them had electricity, none of them had phone. But once the sewer plant brought that stuff in there, it was, especially in the last 15 years, that you can see, you drive out there, it's just gone through the roof with people out there.
Sure.
So there's a lot more out there. As far as our capacity, I'm not worried about it at all. It's more, can we do it? Honestly, I'd love to not have to maintain that road and drive out there to get to our sewer plant every day. If we had it closer and we're able to not worry about that mountain falling all the time, great. You know, but that was part of why we have a right-of-way. It's an easement for a right-of-way use for basically taking care of that lagoon. It's state property, but we have an easement alongside there. And so that easement right-of-way doesn't belong to the city, it belongs to the state. Which if we weren't out there with the lagoon, then basically, we probably look at our city limits to change a little bit back this way and not, we wouldn't be maintaining Little Point Road at that point. I don't see it happening, but
Where are the city limits?
city limits go about 2/3 of the way out Little Point Road. They basically come straight across from Smick right now, and ideally, we'd probably pull that up toward the falls here. The city has no real interest other than that sewer plant.
Just
out
past
there.
Anderson's Cannery someplace.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, you look at the side of the road, I mean, it's just mountain, it's all parkland above it, it's all ocean below it. There's really not a interest of the city other than the sewer plant out there. And our neighbors obviously are out there, but that would become a borough look at it. So there's some real ways to look at how and what and where. And so if you move that into town, it gets it out of Little Point, and then it also then frees up manpower in town not to be out that way.
Question?
Yeah, is there actual talk of moving the lagoon into town, or is that just something that you see would be an ideal?
I think that's come up, and it's come from some of the Low Point folks and gone through. I mean, if it's bad, if it gets smelled, it's a terrible thing out there. And whether that's here or there, I mean, I look at, say, Soldotna. They have their sewer plant pretty much right in town. They don't have a lagoon, they have a facility, processing facility, a wastewater facility. Much more expense to operate it, and all your operators have to then be certified up to another couple levels. But there's some real issues on how and where, and so that's the way I understood why I was here today. As far as that was, where can PACAB try to pick a spot for it, or is there a location to put it and where?
Just a follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of infrastructure money coming into the state and to sewer. Can any of that be used to do what needs to be done with our lagoon, or do you have any input on that?
I'm not sure what monies you're talking about.
What is it, like $5 trillion or something that the state of Alaska got in sewer? Jason, do you know, sewer got a bunch of infrastructure money for?
Yeah, it was mostly just for like water sewer expansion. They're very specific on what we could use those funds for, and so it's a pretty tight window, but like the lagoon is not.
The lagoon is not one of them?
No.
Oh.
So, yeah.
But I got a couple-
At least the funds that I'm aware of and that I've interacted with, they're very strict on
I
water and
have
sewer,
a comment and a question.
infrastructure.
PACAB took this up, obviously, because there was a community request to look at a problem and whether there were solutions. And PACAB has a fairly broad mandate, and it's a clearinghouse. And I don't think there was any intent that PACAB would drive the train, and maybe there's some thought that, but drive the train to something new. But that's how PACAB got involved, is trying to present a community forum. I would ask, because the title of this meeting was sewer options, and Doug, I think you have to be our expert at this. How many technologies are out there for a city with a 2,000, even give that a growth to 3,000, but that sort of number? How many systems are out there, and including the one you've got? And what are the relative costs for those? If you were to build a new one, do you have any ideas? 25 million, 50 million?
When you ask are you talking how many are in the state? How many?
No, in your mind, in your experience, how many options are there for a sewer treatment plant for a community like this? You've got the settling pond type.
Right.
You've got the
It's a total monetary thing. You can go up to a full processing plant where you put in your clarifiers and your whole system that it gets treated through and then released. You have to have a way to release. I mean, like I said, City of Soldotna releases into the Kenai River. They have to have it super clean. Homer, Seward, and Kenai, per se, discharge into the ocean. It's a different regulation. It's almost all regulated by EPA, DEC. And so anything you want to do or try to do, you have to have it engineered, and then it has to pass through those branches to get even a start. You know, to look at anything like this, to me, I think it's got to go to, does council want to fund a engineering group to say, here's possible locations and here's possible that we could do to improve that, to move the sewer plant? I can't just pick and say we can put it here, we can
No,
put that
I'm
on
not
the
asking, I'm not
deal.
asking you to.
Right, and I don't think anyone here can really pick a spot. We can suggest, hey, do this, and then do we send the engineering group?
What does the plant that we've got, what would be the replacement cost for the plant that we've got?
Palmer just had like 85 million, and that was utilizing a lot of what they already had.
Is that a similar size community?
Yep.
So you said 85 million?
Yeah.
And the more technical types like Soldotna's got, are they more or less expensive?
That's getting fairly technical, what they put in, the improvements they made. That was improvements on what they had. Soldotna, I wouldn't know what the cost is to build it, and in today's dollars, that's what I said. I mean, this is an engineering deal, and it's a basically a council decision. Do we want to pursue what? What do we want to pursue to fix and to bring it into town, basically, is what it is.
So, I got one other one. If the plant at Lowell Point were abandoned, would there be any need for the city to maintain the road, electric, or anything else out there?
Well, electric, you gotta do. But the road itself, that's where I said if that's why we're maintaining that road is the sewer plant.
So they would have, the residents would have to form
No,
a
the
district
borough.
or something?
It's in the borough.
Oh,
It would
it's
be
a
borough roads, just right now, all Lowell Point proper, out there in the neighborhood, basically Storm Chasers Inn is all maintained by the borough now. Metco goes out and plows those roads.
Yeah.
So, backtrack a little bit, one of the, I guess, PACAB areas of interest would be the growth of the community, and from what I understand, that plan is more than adequate for our current community size. No expectation that we would.
When we get to the point of it getting toward at the peak capacity in July, then we're right up there.
Right up there, okay,
Yeah.
so it's,
But other than July, it's the rest of the year.
so we could say at certain times of the year we're at capacity, but,
Yeah, I'd say we're right up next to it, yeah.
okay. So, another one, going back to the membrane, I completely understand why you want to package all those sorts of repairs and procedures all in one. That's the time you have access to it. What would be the impact if that membrane were to fail to the city?
It would become an emergency. It would be something we'd have to, did one side fail, both sides fail, what? Where's it at? First off, you have to determine where the leak is. You drain one side. Find where it's leaking. If it's not there, you use the other side. So the problem is out there, if you have a length of time, one side just doesn't do it.
So from PACAB's perspective, though, that's something that we could advise council that's more of a urgent issue to look at, maybe, or are you able to do that well enough in your own?
Well, I think that's already in the process with this $2 million
Okay.
thing. It's trying to get the paperwork and that through to do it, but that won't cover everything. If we want to do the suggested improvements from R&M, those things, and I do, I mean, I'd like to see those go in. That certainly not only makes the plant more efficient, but it also increases the capacity.
That would include, the 7 options that R&M suggested would include new blowers as well.
Right, that was one of the options in there. New blowers, new, more like fine bubble system, a new aerator, a little bit additional aeration, I guess you could say.
This is a work session, and if there's no objections, I will ask the question from the audience.
No objection?
Participation. Okay, Linda?
So, a couple of things. On the legislative priority list that the city has submitted to Washington is a new facility, right?
I believe so. I think that was included as.
Yeah.
So my impression of what this meeting was going to be was a combination of looking at different types and figuring out what type the city wants to have. A lagoon takes up more footage than, square footage than other options. And then potential locations where whatever the facility that you pick, where could it go? So there's really, the way I see it, there's two tracks here. You've got to continue to maintain what you have until such time as you have something new. And that's all the blowers and the liners and all of that. But then on a separate track is this movement towards a new facility at some point down the road.
Yeah, and I don't know if you could hear, if you maybe on the radio earlier, basically where we're at, we don't really get to choose. I mean, this would have to be an engineered deal. We need council to, you know, if that's where we really want to go, council needs to say, we need to do an engineered study of where and what we can have.
Right.
Because it's all regulated by DEC and EPA.
Right.
So they can go through all those regulations and determine, I would hate to have, whether that's here in this meeting picked and said, let's put it at whatever location. Now it's still gotta be engineered, and they go and find out they can't do it there, and they spin their wheels and spend money. It has to be more of a study per se, an engineering study that says, a feasibility study. What and where. And so that would be where it would have to go from here. I mean, we can sit in PACAB and pick all the places we want it. We want the Ray building, or we want the out Dick Raff Road, or we want, you know, those different areas, but then we find out, say, Dick Raff Road, now you can't discharge into there, or you can, or, you know, what's the ramifications, and that's all, it's all regulated. And it's all gotta go through EPA and DEC. And
So basically what you're suggesting is that PACAB make a recommendation to council to do a feasibility study.
yeah, if that's, you know, if, to move the lagoon, to move away from the lagoon and have, whatever it is here, if it's a lagoon here, basically it's moving the sewer treatment out of Lowell Point and into city limits. That's what it comes to, right? I mean, we're trying to get to that point. If that's the case, and what does council feel, how do they want to do that? If they want to continue that, then the next step would be they would need to set up with an engineering feasibility study. So, you know, it can ask that question, where does council feel on this? You know, where does PACAB feel on the process? And, you know, does it matter if PACAB passes anything, or if we as citizens or people say, we want that moved out, can we do a feasibility study? There's a cost to it. So wherever it comes from, it's still gonna have to go through council to get the yeah, let's do it, or no, let's just do improvements, or whatever their decision is. You know, and like I said, I'd just assume not have to go drive the road so much out there, because you worry, just like we had that landslide in 22. Another one, or a bigger one, or whatever it might be. I mean, I hope it never happens.
Yeah, snow slide 2 weeks ago, didn't you?
Snow sides, you know, we can get through those pretty good, but not to say that's not without peril. I mean, we had former operator Mike McCone buried in his loader in a snow slide out there. He came out uninjured, thankfully, but literally had to dig snow into the cab of the loader and dig his way out the top. I mean, there's some real issues with clearing snow also. You know, we have those every year. It just, you know, this year's been a few less than normal. That's been nice. Till we got this rain, we'll see where that goes.
And if a slide were big enough, it could excavate your line for you pretty well, and then you'd be in trouble anyway. And then also too, I want to just say, like, because we do have 2 lagoons. We have one across the bay at Smick. And so even if something's developed on this side of the bay, that they're going to be that on the other side of the bay, and then that's also going to need expansion at some point in time as that area over there develops. So, you know, so that's also kind of part of like this master plan that we're looking at here.
Is the line that goes out to the lagoon right under the road?
Is that PVC or steel?
PVC, I believe that one is. I want to say it's
Is it vulnerable to when we had that massive landslide, there was never an interruption of the service.
What's vulnerable? Like, where's the slide happening? If it was able to take out the road, it would take out the line with it. You've got electric and sewer and communications all in the road. This didn't, when you look at the videos of the landslide and how it came down, and the trees would come and crash, and it kept coming behind it and going, it seemed to come down and fill pretty nicely, where, I don't know what it would do on an even steeper slope if it could come down and jag, but so far, that road's been through the earthquake, the 64 earthquake, been through a lot of storms back and forth. Seems like it's held up. But, yeah, I'm glad it didn't have any issue with that landslide. It was good.
Doug, what's the acreage for the current facility? How big is that thing? I know you've got an outbuilding and parking and stuff, but what are we talking about for
I'd
footprint?
have to look on there. I think it's 5 acres. I don't remember on
I
that.
think
So-
the entire lot's 5 acres.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm hearing you saying, I agree with you, that, it's not in a great location, and it's probably not that easy to service, but in terms of its capacity and technology, it's not entirely inadequate. But it seems though, if we were to relocate, finding a 5-acre patch, we might really have to look at a different technology. Of course, I'm making the assumption that, a different technology would perhaps have a smaller footprint. I don't know if that's the case.
Right. It's just when you go to treatment, rather than, you go to a full treatment plant that's going through the system, you can have a little smaller footprint than what you have with the lagoon. But you still have your clarifier ponds, and typically those are domed over because they're way smaller. But they take up, you have to have first off a belt press that you're bringing all the solids out of the water. You go through a press, press more water out of it, that water goes back in with the rest, and then you have to then dispose of the solids. So how do you do that? And right now, like in the city of Soldotna, everything comes up through their headworks building, belt press goes up, gets pressed, and then depending on, I guess, when the season, as it fills up their truckload thing, then they take it out to their landfill. The Soldotna landfill does take theirs.
Be a significantly higher workload for city staff. You'd have to have dedicated operators, probably.
Staff or contractors, however you do it.
Yeah.
I mean, they ended up buying a couple of trucks that they could use for dump bed plus a box bed for the sewage. They try to get a double utilization out of the truck. And like you see these trash trucks that have the winch that pulls the tank up and on, like the trash tank.
Trying to remember, the city of Sitka has a very small building that has all that equipment inside, and they truck the sludge and debris away, but it's a lot higher tech. That's the trade-off, small footprint and.
Yeah, and Holland often, what's their regulations? There's several coastal towns that the ESA has, that their regulation, they just don't have areas to do a pond or even dump. And some of those are still discharging right into the ocean.
If you had that discharge into the ocean, obviously you got to get rid of your liquid waste, so it's likely going to go into Resurrection Bay. And if you were to use the lift station location, you're right around Quitichik and the Sea Life Center. And their intake is out there a ways, but
Not that far.
it's not that far. So
Well, it's all part of how you have to design, and that's part of the engineering.
Okay, so-
is how to get that, and you take it part way out the road still, you take it out the other way down deep, how do you do your effluent? And plus, remember too, if you go to a full treatment plant rather than say a lagoon that's letting the aeration and the bugs just go, when you have the full-on treatment plant, you're discharging a cleaner effluent per se. Could that just go out, and would that hurt the other issues? Could you do it right there at the Sea Life Center area? I don't know. That's part of how the engineering works. I'm guessing if you can discharge into the Kenai River and get that passed to make it work, there's ways to do it. But Soldotna is constantly trying to trade with Kenai. Hey, we'll bring you, we have better water than you, we'll trade you, bring you water, a big pipe of water, if we can pipe our sewer over to your plant discharge. It's an expense. You know, they've never got it through. Kenai finally got a better well or two way out more east of their main town, but they had a real arsenic issue, you know, for a while. You know, the arsenic levels 10 years ago had dropped. You know, you had to meet tougher regulations. So anyway, those were just things they had to look at and how to do it and how can they save money, you know, to do it, because the operations of a plant is much more than, say, a lagoon treatment.
Have you presented, I think Council had the benefit of this report, this R&M report. Did anything come out of that? Did the Council take any action on that?
On the report, I mean, the same thing where we're really at. I mean, the same thing we've talked about is where and when. You know, we want to get to the point where we have, you know, the funds, and if we get to the point where the sludge is built up to that level where we have to do it, you know, it's time to do it. I mean, we don't want to clean the whole lagoon out if we only have 3 inches of sludge in there. It's monetary tough thing to do.
Well, as I understand it, the real onerous smell, or the odorous smell, or whatever, that came a couple of years ago was a result of a mechanical, a system breakdown.
It was.
That could be maintained and has been corrected. And there was a goal, your department's goal was to make some improvements, including the sludge reduction, which, as I read through this, that has a big impact. The amount of sludge has a big impact on the result. And then these 7 other additional improvements is something you would like to work into, including larger blowers. I assume that you already implemented the more monitoring. You said that earlier in your
Right. We've gone through the first couple monitoring things and turned in the data for it. And, I mean, there wasn't any big surprises there that came out that we could make big changes for, but certainly we still would like to improve aeration. We'd like to improve those blowers. The blowers, they're working, but like I said, they're getting there. They're getting to that lifetime age. And as an operator, to go inside that building, it's a double hearing protection type of deal. They are just plain loud, and they have much more efficient, better blowers. We're to the point right now too of what's it cost to run those blowers all the time? I'd love to shut a blower down, but I don't want it to.
Not $85 million though.
They're 30 horsepower running 24/7, or?
I don't remember the horsepower on it.
So I think that's what it says here.
24/7 on those main blowers, the Hoffman blowers that are out there.
That's a hefty bill for sure. So.
Well, it adds up, and so the newer ones are definitely more efficient. They're much quieter, they're much easier to use in the system, but they're not cheap. You know, just to get those, I want to say they're a couple $100,000 each. You know, and so those are things that we all look at. We've had discussions with council and back and forth, and I've had, whether it's individual council members, administration, we constantly are talking these things and trying to figure out, is there a better mousetrap? Is there a better funding mechanism? Is there things to go? But, you know, at some point, I know we're doing our comp plan right now and our strategic plan, and we're working on all these things as we go through, and part of that is what, you know, is there still grants available that could go to this or not? If not, we constantly are putting in for other grants and what we can get. I mean, we just got our 200,000 gallon water storage tank up Lowell Canyon. It's bad, but we finally just got, it's a $1.9 million grant to replace that. Well, it's not a grant, it's a loan, but it's 1.5 of that is forgiven. So we're getting 1.9 and having to pay 4, and we've got some money left over from the other. So it worked out really good. We're constantly looking for those systems or those grants and funding that we can get. But sometimes you just get the right time and others you don't.
Dwight?
Yeah, so just, I guess, from kind of an engineering standpoint, just thinking about sewage and the distance that you're pumping it, to get it out to Lowell Point, and just the outline of the city and where the population is. I mean, does it matter which direction it goes? Do you need gravity? Should we be talking about a plant at, the very north end of town? Or if we were to relocate, or would we just, be tapping into what we have currently and just maybe just south, but not as far south?
Well, I think regardless where it is, you have to figure out where's that piping. If it was, let's say, over by the lift station 3, there's the rate building area. We don't have to make many changes in town. Everything's going to there to go out anyway. So wherever you go from that point, from the Lowell Point Road area, back this way, you're gonna have to repipe a way to get there.
I'm just thinking about, these bedroom subdivisions and maybe growth going northward as opposed to southward, but it doesn't sound like it matters. It sounds like we have some existing lines that we can utilize.
Yeah, I mean, everything's aging. We're all trying to replace things as we can and get them fixed. But basically what you have is gravity flow throughout town. Most of it, we have four or five lift stations that we run to pump it. End up getting it to here. The one in the harbor area, there's another one over, so we've got the lift stations. You get to lift station 3. Lift station 3 then is the final that everything has gathered, been pumped to the next line, and then gravity flows once it gets over the ridge, back around the corner, gets to lift station 3, and then it's pumped to Lowell Point Road, under Lowell Point Road. So you still have that same, how do you then turn it around? And can you tap in different, it's another engineering thing to get figured out, and of course then we have to have the blessing from DEC, EPA, and there's a lot to it. Where can you dig a new pipe in? Can we stay right in the roadway? Where's the room that we have? So there's some things to it, but like I said, anything is possible with proper funding, if you can get some grants and things. To do it out of just ratepayers, we just don't have the money to do it. I mean, we're tight right now. We're going to need to be raising rates. You saw the electric rates just go up. That affects us big, just like we're talking about the blowers. It's a chunk in our rates, but we're not really maintaining on the sewer systems to be able to do a lot of the extra repairs we want. We've been trying to sock money away, but we constantly have different things going on. Water and sewer lines.
Is that electric provided by the city gratis, or is there some sort of money transfer?
It's a meter.
It's a meter.
We pay just same as everybody else. The sewer system pays to run. It's a building.
Well, I won't drag this out. Clearly, Doug, I think the goal here is to understand that where the system is, what, if anything, needs to be done. And then if something needs to be done, what? And we do have some things on the table about possible ways to go forward. I personally am not convinced from what you've told me that the system isn't adequate for our needs, our current needs, and probably some short-term growth.
Yeah, I think that, the discussion here is kind of shown where what, but I think Linda has the idea that there's two things we're looking at here. We're looking at what's it need to keep this going, what's it need to bring it into town, bring it out of Lowell Point if we want, or once we have to, because we do think about that whole landslide situation all the time. Those are things we have to deal with too. It's like that everybody driving out there's a lot of residents and vacationers, and there's some things going on out there. So at some point, is that in our comprehensive plan? We did put, hey, can we get funding for a new facility? Sometimes you luck out and there's a government thing, they're saying, yeah, we can make an improvement. We're constantly looking out for those things, and that would be a huge change to have something like that come up, but it's still going to have to get full engineering if you're gonna move anything.
So I want to kind of go back to what Linda said earlier. Linda, you said that there was something that went to Washington. The city's got a plan or a request that went to Washington for our lagoon. Jason, what's that? Can you-
So we have kind of legislative priorities that we have, and we have a guide that we produce for, like administration and lobbyists to use as all these projects. And so it has a lot of the major city projects that are anywhere from, we'd like to happen in them really the next like 20 years. So we have like the new public works facility, which we're engineering that right now. We have a feasibility study for public safety, so police department, fire department, because both of those were built just after the earthquake. Actually, the fire department before the earthquake. Then we need new city facilities. We have a lot of like water line replacement and sewer line replacement in there too, because some of those are like really old and decaying. And so anyway, we have this list of priorities.
Something to remember on that legislative priority, it's basically a wish list.
It's a wish list, yeah. It's not.
We're trying to
Right.
prioritize and say,
Yeah.
we need money for all these things. So that does allow our legislators to look for things. We have the lobbyists and the legislators going, hey, we've got an agricultural grant that includes storm drain stuff, and you have this on your list. Here, we can get something for you. So those are very, very valuable to have that wish list out to our legislators. And we
Right.
did add that project to it.
And the project being moving the lagoon, or moving
Correct.
Yeah.
the transfer.
Yeah,
Correct.
and we have stuff like upgrading like SMIC infrastructure, like more power pedestals and water lines and a bathroom over there and all that kind of stuff. And so what we found though is like really kind of some of those smaller projects, something that's more like 4 million or 5 million or something like that. Those are like, we have sidewalk replacement is on there and that type of thing too. And so those projects are a little bit easier to get funding for. What we're finding though is like when we have like the public works building is probably going to be about a $25 million facility. Getting, and then we have, and then the public safety feasibility study basically said too that the fire department's going to be a $25 million facility. And so we have these things that are stacking up, and so they may be able to say, yeah, we can get you like some of that money, but then you have to try and bond for some of the money and that type of thing. And so those ones are they're a lot harder to get. No one's going to give you like this, hey, here's $25 million. That usually doesn't really happen. And so, but it does get it out there, so when there are funds available, you can kind of take that into account when you're building those facilities. So
It's worth having them on there.
Yeah.
I mean, you just look at the tunnel for 185 million.
Yeah.
They were able to secure money to get the core going
Yeah.
on that, and then the core now is, they're figuring it's way higher than that, but that's all part of their funding mechanism
Right.
that we don't have to now deal with.
Speaking of the tunnel, when that project does start going, is that going to affect the sewer line going out to Mill Point?
It's not gonna affect the sewer line itself. There may be, at some point, we'll see where their pilings or things need to go. There could be a spot where we have to just move a pressure line, where we'd have to shut it down for a minute, have it all pre-built, and then route around if we had to. But it's totally off the subject where we're at, but it's gonna be a huge construction project that lasts, they're saying 5-6 years. Now that's top, bottom, and the tunnel, but when they're doing the tunnel, they're trucking material, they're got lay down yards, they got, a bypass going. It's a big effect on, especially the Resurrection-based seafoods. The idea is to keep the road open the whole time, even on a bypass, to make sure that, you always have that access. What if they do it on a barge, and they try to bring a barge in to get material, haul it out? How does that affect the road and stop and go? And because obviously you gotta come across it, whatever roadway or access you have. So there's some real causes that are gonna affect this whole city. Where do they, if they're gonna truck material, right down 3rd Avenue to where? Do they turn on Port and go to the railroad? Do they, yeah, so there's those issues, but then did they just tear up 3rd Avenue that we just had done, and part of that project now has to also fund repairing 3rd Avenue and 4th Avenue, and You know, those are all things that are trying to be taken into account. Do they have to haul everything or haul stuff all the way to Smick and dump over in that area? Lot of things that could affect something else that you didn't really expect, but once it starts, and it's planned to start in '27, it's gonna be, like I said, I hope they can do it much quicker than 5-6 years. You know, I had to remind them, I had to go to a meeting in Denver and reminded them it took them just over a year to build the current tunnel. Well, back then, no regulations, really, no. They obviously engineered it and had it done, and I'm still amazed at how good of a job they did building that tunnel back in 1939-40. But it's 80 years old. This new one is basically double the size, double the amount of material, at least double the oversight from other agencies going through. So when they say it takes a lot more, you have a much different outflow. You know, the inflow's a little similar, but now they're having to design that so we have a way to bypass water past the new one, so we can put the water in the old one again and work on the new one and inspect and be able to move water back and forth. So there's a lot to it.
Fascinating. Dwayne?
Yeah, not to pile on this tunnel location, but if we think about that southernmost pump station and, you know, city real estate and just, you know, surrounding land, I mean, would it, maybe this is for Jason, do you think, I mean, would it even be realistic to try to look at a treatment plant in that area, at that end of our infrastructure? You squeeze something in, I don't know what size we're talking about, but it seems like a place you could consider.
Yeah, I think, as you know, like when you go through like feasibility studies, you always put pieces of land on there that you have like a certain like reasonableness of like why this should be considered. And I do think like that southern end down there you should consider it. And I know that, I think like with anything, the more money you pay, the better it is. And so I think people have been able to shrink down water treatment facilities down to like fairly reasonable small footprints, significantly less than 5 acres for sure. I know that Juneau has one that I think they dump into the Mendenhall, and it's also like one of those ones where you're looking at it from the outside and it just looks like a very like cool building, like nice building. And so I do think it's like anything, if you can pay a lot of money for the best engineering and technology, you can shrink these things down and get them smaller and cleaner and better. And therein lies the problem, is the money, right? But I do think like for the reason that everything currently drains down there, you have to look at that. You know, UAFS has that 7 some odd acres down there, and I mean that would have to be a land you'd have to at least put on there, even though you don't own it, just for consideration. So.
Yeah, a lot to think about. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I think we all learned something. Doug, thank you. I think you did present this information, or a good part of it, in the November 30, 2022 paper that you presented to PACAB, and I think it went to council based on that R&M review that you were asked to do as a result of the failure smelt out there. But since then, I don't know that you've had a failure at all.
Well, I mean, I think it's vastly improved. I mean, I think it's a sewer lagoon, and I can't say that every day it smells like roses, that's for sure. I mean, it's been grown up around, and lots of places out there, and a new campground around it. Ideally, we want to keep it as minimal as we possibly can. And I think it's been doing pretty good. Once in a while, we're getting some, but ideally, it's going to be an earthy smell, and if the wind's blowing right, it's probably coming at whichever way that wind's blowing.
Is that a private campground?
Yeah, it's Miller's on that campground.
Well, I was hoping Tom was going to be here today to weigh in on some of this, but certainly the folks that live out there, Linda and Tom and the rest, I don't know if Penny Hardy's family's still around, but any of them, certainly have an interest in more than even the rest of us here. But I don't know that this session was intended to move this thing forward a whole lot more than just gather more information. And if we present to council that we have reviewed, your presentation, and I think we do need to get that information to council. It's up to them, like you've said a number of times, whether they want to proceed with development work on this. You have a placeholder, long-range placeholder for possible replacement of this facility, but I personally would encourage the 7 items that are on this short-term capital improvement to be implemented before we look at a long-term replacement.
Yeah, and with a guarded eye, look at those 7. You get down to number 6, I believe it was, and he wanted us to do our own sludge removal with the thing. With the aeration stuff going through that whole basin, you couldn't do your own sludge removal elevator type of thing. You drive around with a boat and it pulls it up and you pull it all out and you're working through. You just can't do it with that type of aeration. If you have surface aerators that you can move out of the way and do it like Palmer, they were only 8 feet deep. Ours is 22 feet deep and it's got all that in the bottom and you can't work around it. And I called the engineer about it and talked to him. He went, oh yeah, I kind of messed that one up. So there was 1 or 2 of them that had that. But like I said, we've talked about the blowers, we've talked about the aeration, which would be more the fine bubble aeration to add. Those are good things. The bubbles, that all helps those organisms grow, and that sludge-eating bacteria, it does pretty well. And it just shows by where we keep doing our testing with our sludge, and it's just still pretty minimal. We're really happy with the way that's going.
What would you guess replacement of those blowers with variable speed, modern motor blowers would do in reducing the electrical use? 20%?
Maybe around, I wouldn't know for sure because
That's something significant.
The real efficiency of ours, but I know they're the original blowers in there from 1980, and they're not the new efficiency type models that you can get. I would venture to say at least 20%.
So in today's world where economies of electrical use are front and center, that's an avenue that...
Yeah, and we're exploring those grants, trying to say, look, can we get, this is why we want to do these things. So we try to get these, behind the scenes that most people don't see is us applying for these different grants, us talking to our legislatures, trying to make sure they know when they see something, and they've been good about, we have some pretty good lobbyist legislators that always have their eyes open, and that legislative manual helps a lot for that. And so we've been talking to them too about, blowers, about aeration, what can we do to get these? It's happening, it's just, we haven't gotten success. We did get the success on the tank up here, and that'll be, I'm hoping we can even get that this year to get it going.
Okay.
A $1.9 million project that we only have to fund $400,000 is pretty good.
Anything else for Doug on the sewer options from the public administration? Okay, so let's jump into the sidewalk issue. It came up here somewhere about sidewalks, and I know there's been an active improvement. When they did 3rd Avenue, there were a lot of whatever the particular portion of the sidewalk that goes to the streets called. I think with the ramps, handicap ramps, etc. But there must be a ton of other sidewalks around town that you are identified and prioritizing. What can you tell us about that?
Well, again, I guess I'm just not sure what PACAB is looking for sidewalks.
Well, I'm not either, honestly, Doug, but we had it on our calendar, and I think it's worth a discussion, because I'll start with a comment. I'd like to see every new sidewalk in the downtown area be put in with PEX tubing, every one of them. And if they have to come to a junction box, be capped for future connection to sidewalk heating, that's fine. But I would like to hear whether that is a significant cost, in your view, to add $200 worth of PEX tubing into the concrete.
I think you're low on what that is. Basically,
okay.
basically just along the annex, when we did just that little front of the annex and put in a new sidewalk there, there didn't used to be a sidewalk along that. And we asked, for that section, could we put the PEX in there and how much? And in that little section, $15,000.
How much?
$15,000.
For PEX,
Just to add the PEX to get it all strung in, to do your stuff in it.
from a civil contractor.
That was from
Yeah, prices are
and so you guys know
difficult.
Yes, Fifth Avenue. We did this long project basically from Adams all the way down past Cookery, got rid of all that red brick trip hazard area. $282,000 project, just Fifth Avenue one side. So these are not cheap fixes, and you can request that we add those. That's another decision that maybe we put it in as an additive alternate that council can decide to fund or not. I think it's worth, what do you want to do, and to convince council that that's what we have to have. And then that's what we bid.
And I would say, just so, like, this is also a topic that's in that legislative priorities, because this is one of those items that is so expensive. So it is, sidewalk replacement is in that legislative priority guide, so that we're always out there looking for money to get that.
But I think his statement is, he wants to have PEX under every sidewalk.
Within its zone, Doug. I don't think we're talking about outside of possibly the commercial zone.
That's not what you just said. but-
Well, I said a defined area.
Yeah.
I said a defined area. It wasn't.
If you did, I missed it. I just thought I heard you say every sidewalk we do, we should put PEX in.
Well,
So that.
I might have mumbled.
Okay.
But
Either
my-
way,
yeah, no,
trying to understand it and go through the thing. Sidewalks, we did, the first one was when we did all of our road paving. That was A, and we did sidewalks in there. We did 13 handicap ramps other than what the state had. The next year we did, let's see if I pull it out here. That was 17, 18, 19. Then we did the 4th Avenue Quabi Parkette. I mean, I don't know if you remember, right at the bus stop, it was total cratered out of there. We did that, worked that in, went around the corner. We also did the handicap ramp up behind City Hall. That was a whole new ramp to go up to that parking area there. And then Railway, we had a bad section down coming out of Seaview, that we did that section. Then and that was A, B, and C. D was, and when I say, we just gave them letters, sidewalk project, A, B, C, D. D was then Adams Street by the annex, and then that chunk down 4th Avenue that was basically from just past the ale house back up quite a ways. We took some of the worst, we were trying to do worst first, basically, is where we were at with that. We got those done, and that was, those ones was $145,000 to do those two. Then to do this was $282,000 was E, was this one as we went out here. Then 22, of course, we had the landslide, interrupts most everything we were doing. Last year in 23, we didn't do sidewalks, it just rained all summer. It was an awful summer. And trying to fit it in, we had hoped while the state was doing 3rd Avenue, we could jump in on a few more. There's a few little things we did, but it was really hard for them because they're also fighting the rain and trying to just get their own stuff done. And we were able to get a few things done with them on that, but it was with all the construction we already had going, it was kind of a tough one to try to do anything in 23. What we've got planned here though next on the list is starting out over in front of Liberty Theater. That sidewalk is just awful coming up around it.
I was gonna bring that one up specifically.
Yeah, it's
That's,
there up along the fire station. They did, when they put their water line in, got a little chunk of it, but there's a pretty good section going from GCI right up in there where there's some bad stuff. The bank going right around the corner. We just want to really look at that. The next thing we've got at some point, and that comes back to where Bruce is talking about some of the tubing in there. Gotta do something here at City Hall at some point. We've got our leaning wall out here, the retention wall, and they repaired all the cracks in the sidewalks years ago, and now each side of the repair has got that same worn out crack beside it. So we have a lot of those. We filled some of those back and forth with patches, but at some point that's gotta be done. And I know, depending what all the heat loop stuff goes, this is something that has been addressed by the heat loop committee, that they would like to have this be a PEX all the way down so they could dissipate some of that. So anyway, that's part of those ones. After those, we have some different ones to look at. The 4th Avenue, there's been some real requests from 4th Avenue at Madison. There's no sidewalk, there's a sidewalk is on the right side, not on the left, and then you get down to Monroe and it jogs back over the other way. Well, most of those folks walking up with their suitcases come up that sidewalk, just stay right on that other side and just walk through the gravel and water, and there is a sidewalk across, but it's a traffic, you know, in the summer, you have a lot of stuff going. They just keep walking down that. Be nice to connect that one along with the other repairs we have, because every year we do some repairs, we get others that are coming up. Right up here in the corner at Jefferson and 4th by the new, used market store. Not that you can use it, but the other one right there. We've got some big cracks in that sidewalk and some jogs kind of coming up. We've been trying to work all of those things as we work them in. We'll work that first, then we have on our walkable, part of the grant things, walkable communities, and you can put in for some different grants. Our bike path going out, as you get past Safeway, you go past the visitor center, it's still going there, and then it gets to where the old Diamond is, and it used to try to turn and cut up Diamond Avenue. It's been pretty janky, especially with the new Chugach Mute Hospital going in there, and then possibly Public Works. We're looking with the state to just continue that nice bike path right down around the corner and up, so students could have a continuous spot to just go right up. That's, you know, just one of the requests we have. But sidewalk money, what I have listed in my account right now is $75,000 roughly. Now, I did find somewhere where it hasn't been added in there, but 2 years ago we passed a thing, there was like 700,000, and council passed half of that to go to sidewalks. So looking through those, I believe we've got right close to 400,000
Remaining?
to be able to utilize, and I'll have to go back and find those dollars. But in 2 years, with different city managers going through and trying to make budgets, it's something, I don't know if something's been massaged there and reused, but I don't believe so. I think we do have that money.
Dwayne?
So you're getting closer to the question I was asking. I realize you're doing sidewalk triage and just trying to fix things that are worst first, but and I guess as another comment, I think that, you know, the alternating sidewalk on 4th Avenue that connects the harbor downtown corridor is better than no sidewalk, but it would be good to have sidewalks on both sides of the street. But my question is, just the goal, financial budget, however you want to express it, annually for sidewalk repair what does that look like? Do you try to, is it $100,000 a year? Is it, I guess you can't speak in linear footage, just the money you have available to you?
It was 75,000 is what we used to try to put in per year.
Okay.
That's what was budgeted back even when Jim Hunt ran on here. And then in addition, as we got any type of grants or other funding that we could add to it, we would add a little. And that's where we got these $200,000 projects and $145,000 projects we were able to do. Some of them we hadn't done prior to 2017, 15, 16. There was other things going on. You know, the whole big water plant North Seward was going on. The sludge removal out here. Those are just big things that were projects going on. They weren't doing sidewalks, but does that 75 keep building? Not usually. When you get a budget now, you know, your general fund gets put back and you rebudget. So it's not, you know, and that's something that would be nice to change if we didn't do any sidewalks, say last year. We could pass that up, but I get it. There's a budgetary thing with city managers, got to try to make a budget work.
Do you, how do you determine, do you get reports from users, or do you go out and survey the sidewalks? Or how do you determine where what you're going to address?
A lot of both. I've spent time out there just as I develop these projects, walking through town, walking up every sidewalk, trying to get my worst first. Yeah, some of it comes from user input. Some Sue tripped and fell down on one, broke her arm. I mean, that's an awful deal. We're trying to look at what's worst first and try to get those. There's been some different ones that, how do we address it? Part of the city hall, you know, it's been kind of waiting on what are we gonna do for sure with the whole projects, the heat loops, the other things that may or may not be going on. In the meantime, patching, you know, not ripping them all the way out.
That brings up a question that I have regarding somebody getting hurt on some of these sidewalks that are in pretty poor condition. Where's the liability for that, you know? For example, in front of the bank, like you mentioned, we've got some pretty big cracks, and I've had some comments made to me by customers. If somebody does, I mean, I know if we don't shovel the sidewalk and somebody slips and falls, it's on us, right? But if somebody falls and trips in one of those cracks, is that a city responsible for that? Is the business owner responsible?
There's some liability or risk no matter what it is, and ideally you're trying to minimize those. Fortunately, the folks that have, we've had a few that have had an issue or twisted, or, you know, we don't like to hear it. We want to try to go out and patch that if we can, to prevent it before it can happen. But sometimes there's a lot of sidewalks and trying to get them all at once, it's just a difficult thing to do. So to answer your question on who's liable, I'm not sure the whole liability of what it is. Is it a known hazard that's there? Is it something new? Is it, how deep of a crack is it? Did somebody just catch their toe on something? You know, there's probably a lot to it, and I don't really handle the risk part of it, other than, you know, we're trying to keep them fixed up where we can. But you've seen them, and we've got a lot out there that we want to fix.
Okay.
So, aside from the maintenance of this, might be more of a, I guess, enforcement question, or if we even have anything on the books about clearing the sidewalks. I know snow and ice buildup is problematic, but even last summer, there was a number of sidewalks where you couldn't get through because of the growth, trees and brush and stuff encroaching, and it just struck me as, like, you know, the 4th of July weekend when everybody's in town and I'm having to walk into the street because there's trees in the sidewalk. It's kind of like, what's that say?
And there's a lot of that too. That does fall back on what we're doing and what's the responsibility of the business owner versus the city versus.
Homeowner,
You know, we want to try to take care of that growth the best we can. Same with our stop signs.
Whose job is it, I guess? Is it city or is it the owners?
We get both, you know, on there. The city's going to come out and try to do it, but we certainly encourage folks, businesses to keep things looking. It's to their advantage too, you know, if it's right in front of theirs. But
And if they don't, is there any mechanism for
I don't think
enforcement?
summertime there's much. It's more somebody like you call and say, hey, right in front of the ale house, there's a big bush growing out between the buildings. Nobody's done anything. Can you get that?
Yeah.
You know, and so we'll act on. I mean, there's a lot of things that, you know, we want to be as proactive as we can, but Public Works is a lot of reactive, especially snow and rain and things that we're dealing with.
So a lot of communities just have that responsibility entirely on the occupant of the land.
It does, and we try to share it and try to, we all want.
Kind of more unofficial here? Or?
No, we do snow enforcement for sure.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
let
that's-
Jason answer it, and I gotta take
Is there
a quick
anybody
break.
Yeah.
voicing GCIs?
Yeah.
Yeah, we send letters and talk to them, but like what happens is now we have a mechanism that we send letters, and if they don't, then Metco comes, and we call it Metco, and they come and they do it for us, and then
Okay.
we charge them that plus like an administrative fee.
Is that an ordinance? Okay.
There's some real problems there. I don't want to dive too far off track here, but, you know, we shovel the sidewalk in front of our building and the lot next to us. And then the wind blows the snow back in off the street and freezes on the sidewalk that's not under a roof. I didn't put that snow there, you know, but it's an unending problem that sooner or later the downtown district is going to have to deal with together, in my view. And I know I've talked to some of my neighbors about this, about a community plowing service or whatever, but in Anchorage, they run that snow blower thing that Bobcat snow blower down the sidewalks. Now, I don't know under what arrangement they do that, but is that even a possibility here in Seward?
That I can't, I mean,
You know what I'm talking about? I mean, you can go in Anchorage, and even by Sears or downtown on Fourth Avenue, they run that Bobcat with a snow blower down the sidewalks and clear the sidewalks.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I see the fire department doing with their little plow, but they used to go all the way down past GCI. So they do that side of the street, but not our side of the street. So there's no consistency in what's being done by the city and what's being done by the landowner.
yeah, but then you get into like more equipment, more personnel. Because we already have trouble getting to a lot of the snow the way it is and trying to keep up with it when it's coming down, and so.
Definitely a problem, definitely a problem, but, you know, if we have our staff go down, or let's say hazard staff go down and shovel snow, there's a cost there, and I'd be more than, I would think that the downtown merchants would join together in some sort of a cost sharing.
Sure, sure.
But it's gonna have to be led by somebody, it's not gonna just happen.
And I know there's private companies that do that kind of stuff, you know, if you're all just banding together, because I know, I see lots of people putting notices out there, and I see different people doing it.
We've
So-
had that in the past, and that's gotten tougher. Post-COVID, it's harder to find that for some reason.
And we have also allowed, we did change city code, so now that you can put, in like the downtown area, you can put awnings over, like there was this, at one point in time, they said no more awnings, and now we've changed it so that you can do engineered awnings again, because we actually want people's sidewalks to be covered, because it's easier for everyone. Helps the sidewalk out, keeps the sun off of it, keeps the weather off of it, and all that kind of stuff, which
What
really makes it.
constitutes an awning, fabric or something more than that?
It has to be engineered, just to handle snow and shed snow and that kind of thing, but they did change code to allow awnings, and they just have to be so far up and stuff like that, so now a lot of those buildings, if they, previously, where they couldn't, but planning and zoning changed that code within the last,
Well, you can definitely,
within the last year or two, just because we want that to be an option for people, so that way they don't have to be moving as much snow.
well, if every building from the old Stanton's grocery store down to the end of the block had a awning or a shed roof, it would be an easier walk, except for the open lots. You know, but you can tell the difference between those buildings that have an overhang awning. It's amazing the difference.
Yeah. Yep.
Sidewalks, I had no idea how big an activity is. I mean, we're just talking about $1 million in repairs here.
Yeah, money goes really fast when it comes to concrete sidewalks. It's very, very expensive, and we put in, with all the other communities in the borough for a grant that's called the Safe Roads and Streets for All grant. And so what this does is actually, the grant is to develop a plan. And so we would get the grant if we all went in together. It made it more likely that we all have success that way. And so then, once we have this plan in place, then what that does is it opens up, we're there in the process of developing that plan, but then once that's in place for the borough, then it opens up more money for sidewalks and improvements like that. And so, so anyway, we're working with the borough on that. And so once that completed, then it will kind of give us access to more federal funding.
Oh, for federal funding.
Yeah, for federal funding, for anything that will help create safer streets. So even if you, it's something that we might be able to find the justification for doing down the road of doing something like paving Lear and Alameda, because people avoid those roads because they're so potholy in the summertime in the industrial area there, you know. And so if we can get those paved, it helps disperse traffic. So anything that will help disperse traffic to actually make it safer for pedestrians is kind of part of that plan. And so, you know, down the road. But right now, the number one priority we did put on our first kind of go around was that paving that from around the corner from Sea Lion and coming down and connecting it onto the highway there just past where the Chief Community Clinic is going in, so that way kids can have a consistent sidewalk, because everyone cuts through the old diamond there, but that's going to be truncated and blocked off and whatnot, and so that was kind of our first priority on that list. So.
It'll be blocked off?
Well, Diamond is not right-of-way access, but it's gonna be, when the public works facility goes in there. There will not be access for anyone to be able to come down Diamond even on the walking, because it'll be fenced off there, and so people will have to walk around, and so we wanna make sure they have safe access to do so.
So with the improvements, when you go to paved, from gravel to paved, you can hopefully do that with a grant under capital projects. Does it change the maintenance costs for the public works? I mean, is it more expensive to maintain a paved road or a gravel road?
Way more for a gravel for the first 6 years or so.
Oh.
And that depends on, your road is terrible on drainage, so as long as you can figure out the drainage on it and you don't have asphalt underwater, it's gonna last quite a bit longer, and to have that 6 to 10 year window, it's kind of the whole premise of the state paving trade. Hey, we'll pave 2 of your roads, 1 of ours, and then you keep ours forever. Well, it works great for that 8 years till pavement and potholes start hitting, and then all of a sudden it's a big cost again. But ideally, yeah, I mean, you know, our roads here, the problem we have sometimes is we get that new pavement and somebody needs a new sewer thing or new water main or you know, service. And they dig up the new pavement, which is part of what we have.
Right off the bat, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sure you guys probably grade Alameda quite a bit in the summertime, trying to keep,
Well, I mean,
especially when it's raining, like summers like this last summer, you probably deal with that a lot.
Right, I mean, those two and Little Point Road are the biggest, the gravel ones that it's just one, like this year, lots of rain, and it just is hard if you don't have good drainage and good ditches, and so those are things we're working every year on, but part of, you know, when we go out and try to do, how many sidewalks and things can we do, or these guys cleaning the brush on the, you know, the trees, when they're trying to still, you know, every year we're trying to catch another ditch, we're trying to get another area so it's gonna drain better, and, you know, they're so busy doing asphalt patches and that, and then, oh, we need somebody to come and get the shears out, and we do try to do that, but mainly we're around stop signs and street signs, and trying to keep those visible for people, and so, yeah, we probably miss some of the grass depending on the area.
I had one more question, Doug. Is there a standard, well, the two-part question, a standard for sidewalks, either state, national, or just your internal agency that you use? That's number one. And number two, how does it apply to a more architectural design, like down 4th Avenue where you have some brick? How do those things happen? Is there a standard? And how do you apply an artistic flair to it?
We typically are going to use the state muni standards for our sidewalks, for the construction of them. When you have decorative sidewalks, I would avoid the bricks that we have that we keep tearing out of every place because they sink. But there's ways to do that. DOT over the spur highway going up toward Kenai from Soldotna, they use that overlay where they have the colored pigment they put into the concrete as they spray it across, then they roller, this brick-shaped roller, it just presses these little shapes so it looks like it's bricks, but it's all part of the concrete. And it's, you know, they have a kind of a spot there that, I don't know how they keep the red over here and not there, but they do. And that red is like that permanent staining. I mean, no one on you. It's a dye that dyes that concrete very well. And so you can do different things like that. There's some real, man, I've seen some concrete things that looks like you're walking on a lake. They finished it so differently and so just very well done. But as far as our sidewalk, we don't want something that's slick.
Point?
Yeah, just curious, you'd mentioned the walkway here beside City Hall and these corners on 3rd Avenue. Are we ADA compliant around town for the most part? Is there anything that's hanging out there on our sidewalks?
Mostly we are.
Yeah.
And that's a tough part because we end up, back in 2015, we did these corners out here. There's like 5, 6 different corners we did. Well, come 2017 and DOT is running most of that project of the paving, we added to it and kept that in-house. But they redid the ones that just got redone 2 years before. And we thought that they were already built to standards, and now the state's new standard
Huh.
had come in, and so then they did a new standard and redid them. I'm a little bit, I gotta really get a look at these. We still have a thing to sign off on Third Avenue. I'm a little worried about the bump on them. They shouldn't have hardly a bump for somebody in a wheelchair to get over a little bit of a bump. Good example down here at the end of 4th at Railway, right at the Sea Life Center. There's this little cut in there, and that thing's got a 1.5-inch bump to get over. And so can we tear that out? Can we mill it? We've looked at a little milling machine, you kind of a walk behind, but anybody, if you've been into construction much, the silica dust is a big, big thing right now. You really gotta use a lot of water. Have a way to either vacuum it or have the water to do that, because you're not supposed to have either pedestrians or your workers there breathing that silica dust. It's just another regulated OSHA deal, so how do we do that? And usually it's water, it washes away, but it's definitely something we're looking at, and there's some of those that we need to do. We've built everything to ADA standards that we're doing now, but it's kind of different sidewalks. So if it's controlled, where you have a stop sign or a stop light, sorry, some people don't like to hear the word stop light in Seward, but if you have control, there, a stop sign. That type of a sidewalk and that type of an entrance to the ramp is a little different sometimes than if you don't have a control. Then I see them all of a sudden put it in the middle and they let them come out. There's some of the designs that DOT comes up that I don't quite get, but as long as the wheelchair and the access passes ADA, that's the biggest thing we want to see. But look at 4th Avenue as you go down just right here from Jefferson. The sidewalk itself, I mean, it's just the slope of the land, but it doesn't pass ADA. But how do you make that pass? You still have to make your ramps be ADA compliant. But the street itself goes down at enough of a slope, it's pretty steep compared to an ADA ramp that you want to have.
Well, you're trying. I think that's commendable.
Yeah, and we definitely are keeping our eye on that, and any project we do have to research to go through the ADA, or we require it in the bid for the contractor to use the ADA standards that are current at the time.
Okay. Anything else from the board? The audience? Doug, I thank you for coming, and I know we talked a little bit about some of this stuff before, and over the years, it's not a new topic completely, but it's not a topic that's going to go away. None of this, both the sewer and the sidewalks, are things that we all. Well, I think people pay more attention to the sidewalks than they do the sewer. But you pay attention to all of it for us. I appreciate that. Thank you, and your department as well. And what PACAB's role in this really is just a place to air out, some of this stuff that doesn't get talked about anywhere. Council doesn't have enough time for it in their meetings. Planning and zoning doesn't, unless they got something specific, isn't talking about it. But doesn't mean that it's not something that the community doesn't have an interest in or should participate in. So that's.
Well, I think there's some avenues to help that too, and I think our new city manager is working on her city manager report to make it available on Facebook to go through that, and she's really changing some things around, which is kind of neat to see a different perspective of how to do it. And I think there's a place in there to have these type of updates. I've been kind of looking at the public works updates and what's a way to. Everybody knows our whole crew's been out fighting these water puddles, but that's what goes in the report, what you've been doing. Sometimes I would almost like to see us do okay, here's a report on sidewalks, this is public works. Nothing to do with what happened this week, or we think we're gonna get snow next week, or that type of thing. Some of it can be on that, but it's just kind of fun to work with Kat to figure those things out, how to do a nicer report that is informative, that we could come out and we could do a report on, here's the tunnel. But we also don't want it in there to be a 26-page public works report. We're trying to keep it 1-2 page if that, and keep it to be simple but informative, so. Yeah, look forward to that. That'll keep doing more, I think more good. I think she bragged today, she had just a quick release, had like 90 visits to the report, you know, if people want to go read it, so that's pretty good, and I think that'll just increase.
Well, I agree. I've read some of the recent reports by the departments. I think they're extremely beneficial, and it does kind of show you can teach old dogs new tricks. But I do remember the Jim Hunt Run long days, and I think we're in an era that's even better now. Anything else? Okay. Well, if we have no other business, I would remind board members that anytime you attend a city council meeting, you can certainly speak for yourself as a member of the board. You don't have to speak for the board. There's no action that came out of this, but if you learned anything tonight that you want to pass on today, that you want to pass on to the council, you know, that's absolutely what they're asking for. We're an advisory board. So, and you can do it in letters as well. So you've gathered information, you digest it, and you put your spin on it, and provide it to administration for their use in council. Okay, nothing else, we'll adjourn?
Yeah.
Okay. 129.